I want to start by asking you how this team came together, because you've all got different specialisms within animation and outside animation as well. And I'm really interested in who was the kind of nexus point of this, and how did the rest kind of all form around?
Well, it started 4 years ago when Amy Pascal and Avi Arad suggested to Phil and I doing an animated Spider-Man movie. And at first we thought maybe there have been a lot of Spider-Man movies already, but then we thought more about it, and we thought, well, you could tell the story of Miles Morales, and that would be a interesting and fresh way to take on that myth, and it would be an opportunity to make something that felt like nothing you've ever seen before, and make animation like push the medium to feel like it was a living comic book. So then Phil ended up writing a script. Then we brought Bob on first.
I came on 2015.
At the treatment
2015
stage.
Treatment level. Yeah, we didn't have a script. Yeah, treatment level.
It became very obvious that it was incredibly ambitious and would be unable. We needed more help. Peter was doing storyboards on it.
Peter was boarding on it while directing something else that unfortunately didn't work out.
Or was it unfortunate?
So he ended up he was doing boards on the side for us, and then he just came on. It was super easy.
And then we left town, and the script still needed some work. So Rodney came on and did a pass on the script and did such an amazing job. We were like, please help us. We still need more help. And so we invited him to join the club, and then there you go.
Yeah. All films should have at least 3 directors. That's our philosophy.
You've been doing it wrong this whole time.
We're
We're
like
like
a
a once-in-a-generation talent. Either one is fine.
Give or take.
Was there any pushback to the incredible complexity of this idea? Because, I mean, the thing is, Chris, as you said, there's been so many Spider-Man films already. Mm-hmm. It feels like we've sort of seen semi-definitive versions of that character. And weirdly, I felt, by watching yours, which tries to be kind of anything but definitive, it actually gets to the core of what Spider-Man is about. Maybe better than the previous live-action ones, for me certainly. But just the sheer kind of complexity of that. Did the studio kind of say, well, hold on a minute, we're having how many lead characters?
I mean, broadly, no. Broadly, the studio supported, the ways that the movie was distinctive, because the movie had to be distinctive, to differentiate itself from other things, and strangely, one of the biggest moments in our movie's evolution was when the other Spider-Man movie came out and was wildly successful, because it meant that we had to try even harder to be different and to emphasize the things that we could do that no one else could do. So the only time, like on any movie, the only time we got pushback is if maybe we were trying to do something that was really expensive, and and maybe that was a conversation. But generally, I'd say we were supported in trying different things.
Yeah, it was a support that was on the creative side that was always there, and then on the production side, it was just, wait, you guys want to do what? Okay, we don't but we've spent 20 years trying to not do that. So there was just a little bit of there was some discomfort at first. Not there was resistance, but it was just like, well, there's a reason why all these things exist in our pipeline. Mm-hmm. And we were sort of making rules that were sort of counter to everything they had learned for 20 years, and we were trying to shake things up with mm-hmm. that. So that was the only resistance. And then it was just, it did take about 18 months to get about 2 seconds of what the film would look like moving. Mm-hmm. So that was also, it wasn't due to resistance, it was due to just constant sort of iteration and failures and successes and building on those.
Mm-hmm. Talk me through how you settled on that visual style then, because I mean, clearly this idea of bringing the comic book to the screen in a way in which it still is, it has that kind of visual texture of a comic book completely intuitively built into the image. How hard was it to land on? I mean, is it possible to push that idea too far in which it just becomes completely visually unintelligible? And I see the storyboard guy nodding here.
No, that was my concern going going in when we were first talking about our ambitions for what it could look like. And you're always worried that, well, if we lean too heavily on style, are we going to sort of smother the substance? If we've got to find the big challenge for us, most of the way through the process was finding the balance between this really, hopefully new, bold style that we were going for, and still landing all the emotional subtleties and the emotional, a grounded emotional tone for the movie, which was really important for us. And we had a brilliant production designer, Justin Thompson, and the guys at Sony ImageWorks were able to really collaborate with us. And there was a lot of it really evolved through, again, like Bob said, this is iteration upon iteration upon iteration, kind of homing in on something. I mean, one of our biggest challenges was, what do people look like, walking around in the daytime? We didn't know that for like a year and a half.
So
and we're
good
like,
at doing
oh,
this
God.
in the dark. It looked great with the lights off.
The first 3 sequences were all very dark.
Yes. Very intentional.
and often in masks.
Yeah, I mean, it was like human faces and hands and skin. The idea that you were going to texture it with, half-tone Band-Aid dots and hatch marks for the shadows and painterly textures is a lot easier on backgrounds, which we've seen stylized in 2D for years, but on a 3D moving character with subtly their faces on the light and where the light changes on their face. The dots on a person's face can look like acne if it's stuck to the face, and if it's not stuck to the face, it can be distractingly swarming around. So it was this very, very long process.
The still frames looked amazing.
Right. But moving.
It was garbage.
Yeah.
And it was trying to figure out how to make it move and look good.
And then the process of CG and hand-drawn animation together ended up being incredibly bespoke and labor-intensive, which meant every frame had to be both animated in CG and then subsequently drawn by hand. So normally it would take an animator, in a week they could do about 4 seconds on average for a normal movie, and this you could get about 1 second of footage done in a week. So it was. I wish that we had figured out a faster way by the end, but but no.
I think at the end we had such a large crew and everybody was sort of in their zone, and they were getting maybe we got 2 seconds out of some people that week, which was a huge deal. It helped. Yeah, it seems ridiculous right now, but it was a big deal. We were cheering.
on that point of reconciling these different styles, something, even having seen the film, that I don't really understand how it works, is this idea of animating the characters on 2s and the background at 24 frames. I mean, where on earth did that idea come from, and how do you reconcile those?
I mean, honestly, that idea was born out of what traditional. The first place I worked out of college was Disney, and I was lucky enough to assist Glenn Keane on Tarzan and some other things, and it was just that. It was like hand-drawn animation, was always 12 images per second, which is 24 frames of film, right? So something could stay on the screen for 2 frames and your eye doesn't perceive that it's sticking. 3, it starts to pick that up. But when CGI animation came into being, it for many different reasons, it became something that was moving where you had 24 images per second. And each one was moving, and a lot of it had to do with, this hair needs to move realistically, or this cloth needs to move realistically. And so they became sort of procedural, what we would call in-betweens. And we were just trying to strip all that stuff out, and we were just trying to get to something that felt like a really strong graphic way of telling a story, like a comic book, but animation. And it has this beautiful history of being incredibly expressive, and we were just trying to bring the computer almost backwards a little bit into that and be make it feel as individual and as expressive as a person drawing could be.
Mm-hmm. Was there a particular era of the comic book that you looked to for inspiration in terms of the art style, or was it pretty wide-ranging?
We borrowed pretty heavily from everything,
Yeah.
And the artists that inspire us are individualistic. Sienkiewicz, who's like referenced pretty
heavily
tightly, yeah,
Kingpin
and but all those the guys that like we grew up reading when we were kids, Mike Mignola, and for me it was like weird guys like Howard Chaykin and Mark Badger and Dennis Cowan, like guys that were just, you could feel their mark making was that of an individual.
Mm-hmm. But there was never any question of looking back to using Peter as the core character. It was always going to be a Miles Morales story.
It was always going to be Miles. That was like what we wouldn't have done it.
Mm-hmm.
Because
and I was just going to say to the question you asked Peter earlier, just about the visuals becoming overwhelming. The thing that we always did, because there were moments where we did overwhelm ourselves with visuals, and we tried to scale back. And our sort of touchstone was, as long as we're being subjective to Miles and making sure that this is still just all about Miles and his origin story and how everything affects that, then it all felt okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And if we're split screening things or being,
exactly.
all film school with stuff, it's in service of how he feels.
Yeah. Or a comparison or something. Just trying to be as dogmatic with just the idea that we can't put this stuff in here for artifice. It has to serve the story, and that's why a lot of the effects don't start to enter Miles' life until after he's bitten by the spider. Mm-hmm. And then we start to bring in text, and we start to bring in more of the sort of offset printing and spider sense and all that stuff, and panelization. None of that happens to Miles until after he's got his powers.